everybody. It is me. It is the Cyber Warrior. This is CyberWarriorStudios, and I know we are once again here for another amazing episode of Security Happy Hour. Now, before we get started, some house cleaning items. One, first and foremost, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, all that fun stuff, because it helps me. And if you share this, like right now and in the future, that gets the word out there. Other people can hear what we say. So just a reminder, even after the episode, if you're here live right now, go back, share the video after, share it now, and let's keep going. Also, there are super chats. There are other ways you can subscribe and help the channel here on YouTube. All right, on Twitch and things like that. There's other ways that you can do things in the description of YouTube and LinkedIn. There's also ways that you can support through there. So now those house cleaning items are out of the way. Please remember, this is an amazing show. We're gonna have an amazing time. I got a great guest coming, and so I promise we will be back here in about all of 10 seconds. See, 10 seconds in, we're back. And with me this evening, I have the one, the only, Chip Harris. And we've got a lot to talk about. And I'm looking forward to the conversation. But before we get into it, how you been, Chip?
Man, I have been living the dream, brother. Living the dream every day.
So, you know, you, like myself, like so many others, been in the industry for quite some time. And so, you know, I'm trying to get more new people on this show. So I'm honored to have you here as someone who's been in for a while. But for those watching, please start telling new people to come on, get them out of their shell, and let's get them on here.
Sure.
But besides that, Chip, you know, how'd you get into the industry to begin with? Because, you know, being in it as long as you have and as long as I have, we all have our own stories. So what got you into the industry?
Right. I mean, I started as a bench tech at CompUSA, which most people don't even remember fucking CompUSA. But it was a place that you went back in the 90s to physically go buy a computer. Like, you had to go to a retail establishment and buy one, because buying online in the 90s, the internet wasn't fucking there. I mean, you know, and it was insane because, you know, I started off, working as an Apple contractor, selling iMacs. Steve Jobs had just come back and the 5 flavored colors had come out, in the snow. And it was like, everybody wanted one. And, I started off as a salesperson and then eventually became a bench tech that eventually became a, FST, a field service technician, and they transferred me to Atlanta. And, I was in Atlanta, and I really loved it. And I enjoyed it. It was great and everything. And then I did some federal contracting out there and some contracting with some schools. And then September the 11th happened. And after that, since I had my military contracting and private contracting license, and I had just finished a contract with a Cobb County school system, and they're like, hey, would you be interested in doing stuff with the government? And since you've got all these certifications and stuff that we pay for, would you be interested? And I said, yeah, well, yeah, I'm game. Let me hear. So, what the fuck? Nothing's going to hurt. And to make a long story short, I accepted a contract to become an armed private military contractor, and I signed up with a couple different agencies, to work with them after I got all my background checks and all that stuff done. And if anybody that's in the military knows the clearance process, it's the federal finger up your ass, and they interview your parents and everybody that you know, and blah, 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 blah. So after I got all that done, I got my clearances up to TSCI, I did a polygraph and all that kind of crap, and they're like, okay, now we can send you to all these hotspots and all this other stuff that, that's opened up the government checkbook, to take on the war on terrorism. So I did 18 years, in different war zones, different hotspots all throughout the globe, and did training as well as, going beyond the wire. And I've been shot twice, stabbed 3 times, hit with an IED. And I said, you know what? After my last surgery, I was like, well, I'm done here. I've got enough money. I was, given blood and bone, and damn near brain matter to the country. So, I had to finish out my contract, with the contracting company. And I said, well, I want something in the Americas. And they said, okay, we got something in America. Come on over. I was like, yay. So I went to 29 Palms. They're like, congratulations. You're going to go investigate, the CLOA and the war's drug cartels for, almost 2 years. And I was like, And they're like, yeah, you're going to go investigate how these dope dealers run all their, drugs and everything. Because I was working on everything from, money laundering to, how the Taliban gets its money. That was my job, was to track down how these guys transfer funds and take heroin and convert it into cash, and it's a logistics business. This drug trade is that. That's all it is. It's a logistics operation. The only difference is that, some of them have a ghost fleet bigger than FedEx that move metric tons, of drugs into our country that, 27% up to 47% of our actual populace ingest here in the United States. So it was, a very big operation. Did that, and then came back and I said, you know what, I can do all this from the house. And I built my wonderful server room I have here. And ever since 2015, I've been working remote for, companies as well as the federal government.
So, kind of like myself, you've been working remote since before remote became cool.
Yeah, I don't like people's cooties, and I have a natural, get the fuck away from me factor, because I am an HR nightmare. I am just, human resources to me is human fucking roadblock, and you do not, as I've explained many a time over years and years and years to recruiting companies and so forth, is that you want 25% of your company remote, period. Doesn't matter where it is, 25% needs to be remote. Your cybersecurity team, maybe once a month comes in, but you definitely need them remote, because you don't want people talking about what you're investigating, in a cubicle environment, right? Because the walls are very thin. And you don't want people, to be around the water cooler talking about this shit when you're investigating everything from crime, internal theft, fraud, the list goes on and on and on. So you don't want those people in the office talking about this shit, So in 2015, I explained that to Dell, and who wanted me really, really bad. And I said, look, I'm here. I'm not moving to Austin. Take it or fucking leave it. And they're like, we'll take it. Come on. And I'm like you. I've been doing social distancing way before it was a popular thing. So.
Yeah, and that is. But that, I think a lot of that though comes back to, and it's one of the topics I want to talk about today, is kind of going back to basics. So in the military, you learn about OPSEC, right? Operational security. You learn about ComSec, so your communication security and things like that. So when you think about things like this, we kind of bring some of that into cyber awareness. Your training is, don't let people shoulder surf. Don't let people piggyback in through the door. Don't. If they don't have an ID, they don't get in, these types of things. But people don't take into consideration what is actually going on in the organization, the people that are around, and where they are speaking. So if, let's just say, you go to a conference, and you will see this a lot at conferences. And so when I go to conferences, I bite my tongue. I will always use the client or something like that. I very, very rarely, and I try not to ever, unless I do my whole recon and know nobody's around me, I will never mention a client's name of who we work with, just because you really don't want to get that out there, especially if you're in the middle of doing active security work for them in one way, shape, or form. And so, like for me, when I think about that, I'm like, you go to an office, you don't know what contractors are around, you don't know what janitors are around, you don't know what people are doing, you don't know who's there. And maybe it's my paranoia, but like when I think about the basics of security, I think about it from a physical and social spectrum of, you don't talk about shit in front of people that don't need to know about it.
Well, as I tell students, because I taught, online, for a couple of years, and I taught at a vocational school, which, like I said, I won't mention, but I said, look around this classroom. These people are your competition. They're not your fucking friends. These people that this is not your family. You do not discuss personal information with these people. These people are vowing to get the same job that you're trying to get, if not more. So guess what? You can be, and the thing too is I tell people, in cybersecurity is like, why do you want to get this job? Some people, I want the money, I want the power, blah, blah. I'm like, wait a minute, you're getting into the wrong field, because there's different things that you can give money and power into than what you're doing this. You have to want this, because, you're going to get lied to every day. Every day of your life, you're going to get lied to your face. I didn't click on that. Yeah, the fuck you did, lady. I'm looking at the log right now. I'm looking Tommy click. I mean, they're going to blatantly lie to you to cover their ass. And there is a what I call with them factor. What's in it for fucking me? That's
Yeah.
plain and simple. These people are not your friends. They're not your family. They're your coworkers. You work, you clock out, you leave, you go, go do something the fuck else. I mean, because, you and I, who are old school, we have been on call forever. I mean, we do this. This is a passion. It's 24 hours a day. It's 7 days a week. It's 365 days a year. It's during my, wedding anniversary and my fucking kid's birthday. I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on. It's, and it never turns off. And it's hard for you to turn it off. So I tell students, it's like, look, you have to want this. And out of that top percentage of these people that are going to graduate, maybe the top 10% of the people that are in this classroom, which is about 15 to 20 of y'all, guess what? You might become a SOC analyst in the beginning. And if you get a CISO position straight out, or a virtual CISO position, and you're not in that top 10%, you're being set up to fail. Because it's just, they're looking for somebody to sacrifice on the boardroom table for them not having their security policies set up correctly. Are the best practices.
So I will pose a counterpoint to you, and it is because of the way that I think we need to get better at. And we've been getting there. In my network especially, the people I work with, people I talk to on a daily basis. And we're talking people that could blow me out of the water and take my job tomorrow, and people that I'm trying to bring up. Is that at the same time, and I understand your point, right? These are your people that are trying to get the same jobs as you. But you need to have that network. You need to have those people that will definitely build with you. But I think it comes from a point of that you have to differentiate the information that you share. Right. So you don't share familiar information, because if it's about your family and things like that, anything that can be used against you. But this is where, as you come up in this industry, you have to be able to box things out. Certain things are for certain people. And if you cannot be, if you can't do that, if you're an open book all the time, sharing all your information, guess what? I now have every bit of leverage I need to basically burn you to the ground. And there are some people toxic and dark enough that they don't want a job. They don't. They wanted the learning, and now they're going to go use what they were taught. They're going to use your information against you. Again, paranoid factor about me. I think anything I share can be used.
I have a student that's doing 25 years in the federal clink because what he learned in our classrooms, he went to use for a gang, and that gang actually used his cyber skills to commit crimes. So I mean, you can use it for good, you can use it for bad. That's what I tell people. There's no, the disclaimer is very open. And it is very rare. I mean, I have very few friends that I can count on these, fingers. But your network is how you take those fingers and you put them in those little pots and stir them around. Because the hacking community, and especially the cybersecurity community, is very small and tight knit. And it's got a lot of people and brotherhood and friendship and fraternity, sorority kind of feel to it in some ways. But the other thing though too is that we get out hack each other left and right and base skills palm and go tit for tat warfare. But there's a whole nother genre that's out there for the exact same reason I have to wear a mask when I do these podcasts, is because I've been doxxed. I've had these things happen to me. I've had to change identities. I've had to move, because the federal government was like, these people are coming to this location to kill you. You, your wife, your kid, and your dog and your cat. Simple as that. So I mean, I had to physically relocate and change my entire identity, because when you have a nation state that comes for you, and it was China, I have no problem calling their ass out, because their hacking apparatus is not stopped anytime soon, because they blamed me and wanted to have me deported and put out a, red notice from Interpol to have me basically sent over to their country to face charges of hacking and espionage and counter surveillance and counterintelligence against their OT, environments that they actually have in China, dams, waters, bridges, their SCADA-based systems. And it's like, my lawyer and my Jaguar are like, we do not deport, our, nationals to a foreign national communist country to face some trumped-up charges. Fuck you. So, I've had to go through the whole gambit to where it's like, I am you know, I have my share of paranoia within myself of what it is that I, can information share about myself. And the reason why I wear the mask is because these guys have some really great facial identity software, and it's the reason why I'm behind, 2 VPNs and 4 firewalls, and a web proxy, that changes every 30 seconds. Is because I don't want these guys to track or trace anything that is that I do, for my job, and for the clients that I work for. So, not only my personal security, I keep, very close to myself because you can threaten me all you want. Don't come after my wife and my kids. I mean, that's where I draw that. That's it. I mean, you can yell and scream at me and call me names all you want, but you don't come after me and my family, and that's where, a lot of things that, I tell people, so, my job's not only to protect myself, but it's also to protect my clients and my family and everybody that I work with.
So with that, because I mean, and that's the right way to go about things because family comes first, which is why as much as I think it's easier for people to get into this field earlier on in life.
Yep.
It's a lot harder later. And there's a reason behind that. And again, it goes back to the passion and the 24/7 type of mindset. I won't say I lucked out, but I was in a situation where the military was 24/7. Like
Oh
there
yeah.
wasn't a day off. There was, if you're, and especially as an NCO, if a soldier fucked up, you were getting a phone call saying, hey, you got to come in. It's Saturday at like midnight and you got to now go in for a DUI or whatever. Like these things happen. And so for me, I utilized the time. I had always bettered my skill set every night. I was always working on things to me. Again, if I wasn't actively doing it at that time, I felt I needed to get better at it. It was never about the money for me. The money will come. And I tell anybody this, if you are passionate, if you love something, the money will come. It doesn't matter what it is. It could be
Yep.
fucking basket weaving. If you meet the right people and learn how to market yourself, guess what? You can make money. The money will come. You just need to be able to deal with the hardships that go along with whatever your profession of choice is.
And that's the problem is that people don't understand this takes time. I cannot run you through a boot camp. I mean, you have to fail. Okay. And sometimes you got to fail a lot to learn, and it's not a straight path. I mean, you and I can testify to that. It has a lot of curves and ups and downs and potholes, and broken bridges that you have to get to. But the people that in the support system that you have in the community that you have that's around you, if it doesn't exist, you've got to make it exist, and you've got to take that from what you've learned and apply to it. Because, I mean, I grew up poor. I mean, dirt poor. And I had 2 choices in life, the funeral business or farming, and that was it. I mean, that were my choices in life, that I could just walk into and didn't have to have hardly any education or anything to do. And I'll never forget when I was in preparatorial school, I saw that, Apple IIe, if people remember these Apple IIes. And I said, this is the future. I mean, this box, this computer. I mean, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to dedicate my life to do. I want to know everything about it. I want to know how to break it. I want to know how to put it back together. I want to know how to code for it. I want to know everything and anything that pertains to technology because I saw that as my out. Especially in the situation that I was in. So it was like what I can put in my brain and I can put in my mind, no one can ever take away from me. And that's how I approached it because, I grew up in a military family, and I grew up in a military mindset, and my dad was like, look, if you want to get into this, I'll help you, son. It's going to take a lot of work on your effort and a lot of, money on my effort, but we can make this happen. It's just going to put us in dire straits. And I swore to myself, I said, I will never be at that level ever again because I was at so low of when I started out. But when you start out with nothing, hey, guess what? Sky's the limit.
And everything is something. And so, all right. And I like to rant and ramble, and we will get back on topic of cybersecurity basics because it is very important and something we need to talk about. But on this note, because again, this show, I do want to kind of gear towards more newcomers that are trying to break into the industry. And it's because of some posts that I've seen recently. I have someone right now, someone that's been on the show that because of situations, they've been going at it for 3 years. Shit hasn't, gone their way, kind of fallen out of the race and going back to what they were doing. even though they have like some of the basic certifications, Security Plus, they've been learning, they've been growing, they've been doing all these things, and it just hasn't gone their way. I get that. But let me put something into perspective for people that they need to understand. A, when you are at 30, 40, 50 some years old, you've got a wife or a husband, you got kids, you got a house, you got mortgage payments. It's very hard to take that pay cut. But you're going to have to. It's going to happen. Because here's what I did. I got out of the military with more letters after my name than the damn alphabet. And yet still my first job out of the military in cybersecurity was for $62,000 a year in Pittsburgh, which basically said I could feed my kids and provide lights, and that's about it.
Yep.
There was no extraneous expenses. There was no way that was going to float for 5 kids, a wife, and extra anything. It literally paid my rent, paid my expenses, and that was it. I was done. But it was a stepping stone, and it got me more and more and more. You have to have a starting point. So for all those trying to break in, even with experience, somebody that had more letters, that had been to CTFs, that had gone through the military, that had the IT, the networking, and everything else, that had been, I worked at Circuit City Fire Dog and rebuilt computers and troubleshot computers and did everything else. I had tons of experience. But getting into enterprise cybersecurity is a whole different can of worms. It's going to
That's right.
take passion, and it's going to take the right resume and the right references, which is why your network is important. Your references, your resume will get you that job, and your ability to sell yourself. I am sorry, but if you're socially awkward and not able to answer questions, you need to get better at that, because the first person calling you is a recruiter. And they're going to say, okay, well, what have you done? If you're sitting there going, well, you see, maybe, kind of, no, sell yourself. Be confident.
Yeah, the one that gets me is oh god, that's taking me off. Because I run a red team, and and if you've ever run a red team, if you ever worked on a red team, and I tell the kids out there, and I tell the youngsters, it's like, look, first off, I'm getting old. I mean, I'm getting old. I mean, I have aches and pains, but I mean, like staying up till 2, 3 in the morning to bypass, an RSA switch, a router to get into a firewall and pop it, blah, blah. Those days for me are slowly going away. I mean, I am at a management standpoint because, I manage a team of 5. I work in a team of 15. I report directly to a manager and the CTO and the CIO. So it's kind of like I'm at that upper echelon, and I get that, and it took me a long time to get into enterprise security, and there, those pitfalls, they hurt a lot. But the key thing is that I tell them is communication. Number one, you have to be able to communicate with me and tell me exactly what it is that's going on, because I say, and I give this to students as a situation because it happened to me. I would not tell you this if it didn't happen to me. The first week I went to go work for this healthcare company, which was massive. They had a cybersecurity breach, and I literally had the CIO that made more than 6 figures walk into my cubicle and literally said, you have 15 minutes to start pulling firewall logs, all this information. We have a group chat between the networking, the firewall team, the security team, and your team that you're going to be, working with. I need you to start pulling information, logs, anything that you can do to show how they bypass this on these ports. And I'm writing this stuff down on a sheet of paper. And he's like, you have, 15 minutes, go. And I was like, and I could do it. I mean, I had to perform. Most people nowadays wouldn't know how those tools packages work. So they'd be sucking their thumbs, shitting themselves under their desk in their cubicle, because it's like they've never had to physically, click the keys and click the mouse to do this kind of stuff. So you've got to cut your teeth somewhere. And yes, you will start off at the bottom with a low pay grade, but it is a stepping stone to get you into the next position for where that you need to be. And my resume speaks volumes. I have a 4-page resume because guess what? Every position that I apply for, you have to give 10 years experience. Most people need to have 3 to 5, right? And a list of their certifications in bullet point fashion, or what it is that they've done.
That's
I
because
could
you like the government so much, and they always require every job you've ever had.
have,
Ever.
yeah,
I
they
have
go back,
looked at those resumes. I hate them.
they go back a decade. It's because it's like, motherfucker, if I was a terrorist, you would know by now. If I'm
Yeah,
committing fraud, son of a bitch, you would fucking know. You would fucking know. You know, I mean,
I despise it. I worked
it's
when I was in the army. I dealt with a lot of civilians, and we would talk a lot. And they were like, "Yeah, to apply for any of these positions, you literally need to have all of your experience for like the past forever."
right.
And so where we try to master 1 or 2 page resumes, they got to master, put everything on there, everything. Tell a story, get
Yeah.
me to
I
10 pages
mean,
if you can. And you're like,
since
I'm
the
not
day
reading
I
all that.
graduated, yeah, it's like since the day I graduated high school and I picked up a screwdriver and I started working at a bench tech, this is what I did. And I explained it to him. And when I did my polygraph and everything, the guy comes back, he goes, "You got to be lying." He goes, "You have the cleanest fucking polygraph I've ever asked of anybody." And he goes, "You're Edward at the time, Edward Snowden level kind of, position I was applying for. So it's like, you can't fake that shit. It's not fake it or make it. You got to do it."
Yeah,
And
yeah,
especially when you're working in counterintelligence, counter surveillance. And since I deal with IT and OT, which most people don't deal with OT, and we need people in OT cybersecurity. Oh my God, we need people in OT cybersecurity because we are 7 to 15 years, sometimes 30 years behind where we need to be in water treatment, nuclear power. I mean, the list goes on. Infrastructure. I mean, and that's what I deal with, is cybersecurity for that, because it's like, yeah, okay, if I crash your network, you lose data. If I crash a fucking city, people die. I mean,
yeah.
it's just that simple. You know,
So,
it, it's a big inconvenience when you don't have water, power, electricity, sewage, and all those kind of things. So,
so
it's hard.
yeah, and so given your background, especially when you're looking at OT, SCADA, things like that, and you can look at hospitals and a lot of things the exact same way, especially in the States, we see it because money becomes a factor, right? And look,
Oh, it's always a
money
green
is
paper
always going to
problem.
play a role here in the United States, and actually in a lot of Western civilizations. Um, what would you say is the biggest issue behind cybersecurity basics? Because I have my opinion on it. I know I feel like I know what the biggest issues that we face are within these industries. And I've stated it before, but let's get your take on it. What do you think is really harming us from a basic cyber, just overall arching basics? What are we missing?
For someone that's wanting to get into this, is first question is, and I tell this to academia all the time, is do you have a cybersecurity roadmap program for somebody that wants to get into this, industry? And they're like, well, we have a bunch of these classes. Okay, but that doesn't tell me if that does that give that person a choice to be a network engineer, to a cybersecurity engineer. Do they want to get into, pen testing? Because everybody wants to be a pen tester. Okay, congratulations, you got a couple of pen testing, classes that they would take. But there's more that goes into that than you would ever imagine. And I always say that it begins with education. You've got to educate yourself on what it is that you want to do. If you got the passion to become a network engineer, I will throw you in that direction. And if that's the way you want to go, and you want to deal with ARP and RARP and network tables and subnetting all day long, I will send you that way. I'm not fucking good at that. But if you want to do it, I'll send you that way. That's why I have a very specialized person that's on my team that loves networking. He eats, breathes, shits fucking networking and routing tables all day long, and he fucking loves it. And he's got, piercings in his face. He's got, long black hair with purple tips. He's married. He's got 2 kids, and sings in a cover Norwegian death metal hardcore goth band, in Vegas. Very good friend of mine. And and that was the thing. I got lucky in this job because I got to hire my friends. So I got, I got a networking engineer, I got a really good pen tester, and I brought these people in and they interviewed them and they say, well, what are you going to do with this whole band of misfits? I said, I'm going to fucking pay them and I'm going to hire them. We just finished working for the government, and this is the team that I worked with. This team, well, they don't have this educational credit, or they don't have this fucking certification, or they don't blah blah blah. I said, trust me, this guy could take a fucking network cable and shove it into a goddamn toaster and network it. So what? He's got a GED, but the motherfucker's got 20 Cisco certifications, and I can't tell you how many other certifications. because that's all he does is eat shit and breathe Cisco and VoIP and all this other kind of stuff. And he's really good at what he does. And I really want to hire him. Well, we're going to take a chance on being able to hire him because he doesn't meet certain qualifications. So we'll have to start him with $3,000 less on the pay grade scale because he doesn't have these certs. I said, what if he goes to get that certification? Well, then we can give him the full amount of the pay. And I told Carl, I was like, Carl, go take this fucking test tomorrow. He went in there and fucking made a 99. I think he was like one question out of the whole thing. I came back to their HR department and said, see, I told you. He took it. He's got it. Now fucking pay him. Because you know what? America is a business. And guess what? Fucking pay me. It's just that simple.
Yeah.
We work on a capitalistic model. So congratulations, fucking pay me. Same thing. Your time has a certain thing that I've equated to business when I teach this to students. Time versus revenue of expense equals money. Your time has a certain dollar value that's tied to it that's an expense to that company for them to pay you for your skills. So you've got to show your worth. Show your soft skills. Show what you know. Tell people what you don't know. Tell me what you learned. Tell me what you haven't learned. Tell me what you're passionate about. Tell me what it is that you want to do to bring to the table. Because if you bring nothing, you fucking get nothing, man. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, and that's I think the soft skills are the biggest thing. And I got a comment here from Brad. Some of the best teams are when you have a group of differing specialties and the team trusts and know each other's strengths. Way more powerful than one person that may think they know it all. And
I agree with Brad because the motherfuckers that say they know it all are the ones that scare me. Because I've been doing this for a long time and I don't know it all. And
which is why I despise the term cybersecurity expert.
Yeah,
absolutely despise it because there are facets of cybersecurity that you can become an expert in. Web apps, SQL, network network pen testing, things like that. Even, I'm a SIM expert because I can use all these SIMs. I know how to do it all, whatever. Okay, cool. But to say as an overarching, and this goes back to cybersecurity as a career field, not a job, as a cybersecurity expert, I despise that term because there is no way in hell that you know everything and can be an expert in cybersecurity.
Yeah, it's just impossible, And, I'm kind of glad that some of them have branched out and made different little sub-trees of tests that you can take. But it's like this. I've had a lot of paper tigers I've looked at. And when I say about paper tigers, they look good on fucking paper, but as soon as I put them under pressure, pressure changes everything. You either do two things. You either focus or you fold. And that's normally what happens. And if you fold, you're out the door. It's that simple. Because that means that you lied on your resume, you lied on your CV, you don't know shit about Active Directory, you don't know anything about rules, you don't know how firewalls work, blah, 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 blah. Now, I'm a little different because I work with the government. So, we are very containered. Very contained. And, we are, very specialized in this, what we do. So part of my job during the week is I have to wrangle a lot of cats together, decision-making cats, okay, into one bag to make a decision. So I cut through a fucking boulder of red tape a day, sometimes to get shit done. But the great part of it is I have a CTO and a CIO that just basically, when people start kicking back these long fucking chain emails arguing with me, he just literally replies, says, Chip knows what he's doing. Do not argue. Do what you're told to do. Do not question me, ... Simple as that. Because I know that the people that I work with know that I'm an expert for what it is that I do. Not for what they do, but for what I do.
Right.
And they trust me in that because in IT, you care about governance, you care about, data, you care about leakage, your data is a commodity. I've said that for years. Your data is a fucking commodity. In OT that I deal with, as well as IT, not only is the data a commodity, but the spawn of what it is that we're dealing with in OT cybersecurity is safety. Safety spawns cybersecurity out of that. So it's kind of like a little bit of a reverse because we deal with the human factor because what we deal with deals with the real physical world. It's like if I shut that off and I shut that valve off, what does that turn off? Because that turns off power or water or steam to something else, or causes a break or causes an outage. So, as I tell people, it's depending on which side of the fence that you're sitting on, because I understand the IT world. I've been there, I've done that, I've done it for years. The OT world is a completely different animal, completely different lingo, completely different
But does the
mindset.
OT world not still rely on the IT world?
It is. It is. It's a very gray line. Do not get me wrong. I will not sit here and try to say that, oh, there's a definite line in the sand between. But no, it's very gray. The IT depends on the OT. The OT depends on the IT. But there has to be a distinction between the SCADA-based systems and your, IT systems.
Very,
So
very true. And you're not wrong, because you figure you're looking at all the P, PCL shit. I can't remember the three letters. PLCs.
yes,
Yeah, the primary logic
pro,
controllers.
programming logic controllers.
Yeah. So you got to look at those. You got to look at 9 times out of 10, at least here, and which is why I say we're pretty screwed right now. Go ahead, hate me for saying it. I don't care. It's a fact. When you're running Windows XP, Windows 2000, and Windows Vista as your primary operating system for 90% of these systems, there's a huge issue. But this is why I say, from a basic functionality and from a basics standpoint of security, that money runs the world, and
Yep.
especially Western civilization, because what had happened was you had companies come out and say, we are going to support your shit, update it, do all these things over the course of 5, 10, 15, 20 years, whatever the contract was. They signed it. They said they could do it. Updates and patches only came, I don't know, once every quarter, if you're lucky. And then they went out of business after a year or two. And so now, in order to get updates, in order to fix your shit, you've got to pay billions, not thousands, not millions, billions of dollars, because you invested all of your money into this one system, and now they're out of business.
Well, yeah,
And so
I
now
mean,
you've got to redo everything just to function.
that is correct. So I'll give you an example. I have a building right now that I'm working with. They have not done patch management in 8 years because, I mean, it's a vendor controlled system that we could not touch. And we sat down with lawyers, we sat down with their legal department, we sat down with them, we sat down with their program managers, we sat down with the PMs, we sat down with maintenance control, and then finally the CTO and the CIO. Okay, so all these people are in one room. I'm there virtually, and I'm like, hi there, you have a XP system service pack 1 that runs all this. You have 127 of these devices, which are called PLCs or SCADA-based systems, that run all these systems that are EOL 5 years ago. So it's $300 a box to replace them. And is the vendor going to do that, or are we going to do that? Because we pay the vendor to patch them. Oh, and they haven't patched in 8 years for any of these systems. So congratulations, you're still on Windows XP, which is a 14-year-old operating system that still has tons of major issues that are out there that's still being used. It's vendor-owned and proprietary operated. Legal says that, you know what, we're not going to meet compliance regulations, so we need to update it. Wait a minute, that's why you pay these guys for, and they haven't done it in 8 years. So first off, they lied to you, and so they were patching regularly and doing all this other kind of shit. Then you caught them with the pants down because they're using an operating system that's been EOL since Jesus came down with or Moses came down with the damn tablets and said, here, heathens, listen to these 10 things, I mean, it's been around for a long time. I mean, since Christ was put on the cross. So then you're not going to meet certain regulations for that. I mean, and the ball just keeps rolling down the hill. I mean, I could keep going on for an hour about this.
But that gets us back to the biggest
The
thing that I think
basics.
we miss
Yeah.
in this industry.
Yeah.
The biggest basic thing is patch management. I
Yep.
saw this at my first job. I saw this at a lot of other organizations since I got into consulting. Patch management is the biggest issue.
Yep.
Too many companies I have seen, they're always a month behind. Then you get into the SCADA and OT. So we're not even talking power grid at this point or hospitals. Just companies are a month behind.
We're just talking about there's some companies you can't even touch it because the HVA system, the electrical, let's say elevators, escalators, those are all different companies, right? But they're still part of your building automation system, right? So just because you update your building automation system doesn't mean that you update the individual things, because those vendors won't let you.
I had a company I did consulting for one time. and they legitimately, you could not do a tenable like a Nessus scan on the controller box for one of their systems because it would shut down and lock everybody out of the
Yep.
office.
So just for the audience that doesn't know, exactly what he's saying is true. So if you use Tenable, Nessus, anything like Wireshark, whatnot, when you scan these OT systems, like a water power grid, any of the vendor-controlled systems, I say vendor-controlled systems, they are 100% hard-coded. And they're on a little SIM card, that you would find in a phone, or like a mini SIM, or just a regular SIM card that would go into like a digital camera. And those instructions are maybe 8 lines. And if you erase those 8 lines, that thing goes into a safety mode where it doesn't do anything. So it just turns itself off into a safe mode and says, okay, I've lost my instructions. What do you want me to do? So I'm just going to sit here until you tell me to do something. Because that's what they do. They're terminals. They're dummy dump controllers. They're not computers by any means whatsoever. And, you can put them on older operating systems like the XP because guess what? They don't need a whiz-bang, operating system to run them. I tell most people, run it on Linux. It's a hell of a lot easier, but oh no, we want to run it on Windows because that's what the vendor recommended, and that's what we did. But so anyway, to make a long story short, if you erase those instructions on that SIM card, it's gone. So if you scan those hard-coded systems, these systems have to work in nanoseconds. So, as soon as they lose that connection, it's over with. They stop.
Yeah, and that's been, we see that in OT all the time. Anything SCADA based, but so here's a question. How do we get past that from a patch management standpoint, from a security standpoint? Because if we cannot upgrade critical infrastructure, hospitals, and you see this all the time in hospitals also, right?
Oh, yeah.
Because they fall into the same problem. You got a company that says, oh, I'll be around forever. Use our shit. We'll send you a disc out every so many months to patch it, to do the updates. Now we're seeing ransomware run rampant within hospitals. We're seeing ransomware run rampant even within schools like universities. So when you're seeing this, and hospitals being the key, the issue is they are not getting updates at the speed of which they need them. So do these companies need to update the speed at which they update these machines? Meaning, I'm going to give you a disk every month now, as opposed to every other month or every quarter or every 6 months.
Well, since a lot of these systems, especially let's say, Skyscraper, okay, they're blended, so they would have to probably send out 13, 14 disks for that to happen. A lot of this is actually done proprietarily based on, the internet going from their private cloud or their private, VPN connection into your system through what they call diodes, one-way diodes. In other words, the information goes in, nothing comes out, right? So it's a one-way street. No other connection can be made to where they can push those updates. Now, that is very expensive. That's what I call a green money problem, okay? So this is where you come into when you do your cybersecurity audits, and when you say, okay, we have to update this system every Patch Tuesday, or we have to update it every month after Patch Tuesday because we want to test it in a sandbox environment, make sure that it works correctly before we make it a gold image and send it on its merry little way from the VM world to the physical world, or P2B or B2B2P, whatever you want to do. So between that being done, you've got to test those systems, make sure they work correctly. So if you patch them, it doesn't brick the system. So that's a very good thing, that you're testing those actual applications and making sure, hey, everything's working okay.
Right.
But, this goes back to your vendor relations and your patch management policy that you have with that vendor. So some vendors only put out patches, for example, every 90 days. Okay, that's understandable. I get it, because nothing's really going to change in 90 days for a lot of those systems. We do have some systems that are more kind of fragile, kind of tactile, that do smaller kind of intricate things. For example, in the healthcare industry, especially in a lab environment or a pharmacy environment, when these, microns count, and millimeters count and centimeters count, and deciliters down to liters, down to millimeters, all that stuff that you learned back in preparatory school in dealing with chemicals, that are being released into these drugs, or chemicals that are being released into pharmaceuticals, or even into water treatment. So these things really do matter, and you have to be very sensitive with those systems because sometimes it is fire and forget. They got it, it's working, yay, God's in his heaven, all's right with the world. Guess what I'm going to do? I'm not going to worry about it anymore. If the vendor comes in and makes some changes, whoop-de-doo, right? But if you are held accountable to the basics, right, of your certifications for like 852, 853, 800, the revision 4, revision 5, or the 803 series, or NIST, PCI, IEEE, you've got to check those things, especially medical.
So,
It's 4 times even worse if you're in OT because you got to do that every 6 months, according to CISA now.
so we know we have issues with OT. We know we have
Oh
issues
yeah,
with data. What is your take? And I have seen this on time and time again on companies. So their enterprise servers haven't been patched in 6 months to a year
oh
because if they
Jesus Christ.
restart it, now all of a sudden they're out $1 million every hour, and a 30-minute reboot might cost them $500K.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is the reason why that there's some people say go the virtual route, to where you've got a newer snap versus an older snap, to where you can change out one reboot or anything from the other. In other words, do you have a DR plan that where one's being updated, you fail over to another, and then you fail back over to the one that's updated, and vice versa. I mean, that's depending on your budgetary plans, on what it is in the infrastructure plans that you have for your
If
IT
you're
budget.
making that much money that you're out $1
Yeah,
million for a reboot, you really should have a plan to be able to restart your servers
yeah,
in sequence.
you should be able to have that in sequential, where if you're going to just switch over the IP from 10.1.1 to 10.1.2, right, and then two's the backup. If you reboot one, just like an AD, it'll fail over to the next. So congratulations. One's updating, applying 132 fucking patches and taking it to, Windows 10 or 11, whatever the hell you're going to do, or server, blah, 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 or Linux, or your cron job, or whatnot. So as long as it's failing from one to the back, and it's snapping the new one, and then the new one boots back up, congratulations, you just roll it back into the next one. I mean, you can do that with multiple different, vault programs, and that's how well your DR plan is. It's set up for doing your patching and failover and program and process management.
And I think
I work in the data
that's our
center.
biggest issue though
Yeah,
within industry today
and
is that they don't have the proper failover procedures there, because we could talk patch management all day. We see desktops, we see people get pwned every single
every
day. It
day. Oh
happens.
yeah,
Even security experts fall for phishing scams and get pwned. This shit happens. We know this. But from an enterprise standpoint, your individual systems, okay, shit happens. It's going to happen. We know this. But your servers should never,
right.
they should have that failover. They should be able to say this at the third. And if you're making enough money to run Active Directory or Linux or anything like that, right? So you're running RHEL, you're running Microsoft, whatever you're running,
Right.
you have enough money to have a failover or have a backup or have something to where, okay, I'm going to reboot this shit and this other one's going to take over. And then when it comes back online, we'll take a new snapshot and we'll run with this one.
Yep.
It'll reboot, it'll kick back over to this one, and we'll be golden. But they don't do that.
That's the problem, is because that takes money.
But the reality of it is, isn't everything money these days?
It is.
We need to be able to, and this is where I think we fell as an industry. And I talked about it with Alyssa Miller. I've talked about it with other people, and I'll talk about it here with you. And even you stated it in the invite to here, is our failure to communicate and how we are more of a benefit than an expense.
Right. I mean, and I'm going to tell you, I told it to my CIO and my CTO when I put in my budget for the year. I said it's going to get worse, and he's like, "What do you mean?" I said, "Like," and the funny thing was one of these analysts asked, "When does it end?" I said, "Cybersecurity never ends. It never ends. It's an endless hole of money that you put into because you've got to have new tools, you've got to have new stuff. I mean, Microsoft, they make money by us selling operating systems and updates and patches and new stuff. I mean, that's how same thing with cybersecurity.
And now with the cloud, it's just an infinite expense of monthly
yeah,
money going out.
yeah,
And people are like, oh, well, I don't got to pay an electric bill anymore, or I don't got to do this. No. But you do realize that your data consumption went up to like 3 terabytes a week. And so now it's costing you $500,000 a year to run X, Y, and Z.
yeah. I mean, I tell people that cloud is really good for a disaster recovery plan because, you still sometimes physically need to be able to go out there and touch it. Now,
Yeah,
I'm old school because that's the way I was trained. That's the way I was learned is that there's a physical here and there's a physical way over there, right? And if that one goes poop, there's another one over there that can pick it up. So, I mean, it's as simple as that. Cloud to me was just like, oh, it's just my shit somewhere else. And I'm just
it's
not
somebody
paying for
else's
it.
computer.
It's somebody else's computer somewhere else. But guess what? It takes 5 to 7 years for that to plateau to where you are not literally using your hardware expense, to that point, and then you start inching your way back down to where it eventually will level off. But the problem with that is that there's such an uptick, like you just said, of expenditure that's going to plateau, and then it's going to stick there for a while, and then it's going to start slowing down because you're starting to get rid of your older boxes, your older servers, stuff like that. And then it's eventually going to even out to where you'll know a baseline in about 5 to 7 years how much it's going to be. That's just a given. Same thing as I tell people, when you look at the medical industry and the banking industry, and the OT industry, they're a very Doric business model. They are. I mean, and if you know how to bob and weave through all the regulations and stuff, you can make things happen. It just takes time to kind of learn how to make those things happen. But what you do and that change actually happens, everybody's then going to want to adopt it. Everybody then wants to be able to do it, right? Because if you look, that's the whole bullshit that I cannot stand about our industry is the verbiage. Like, they used to call it data lakes, and now it's data pipes, and now it's a data flow.
Now we got Snowflake and everything else.
Yeah, Chris Roberts and I were talking about this one time, and it was like, they used to call it data pools, and then you roll the clock back about 10 years ago, it was like cloud, and then it was like Bitcoin, and then it was secure, zero trust policies, and then it became AI. This is the big buzzword for the year. I was like, if I hear one more cybersecurity company, drop their AI bullshit, I mean, it's just like, dude, we've been using this for decades. I mean, this is nothing new.
Well, the best I think to that is people don't know the difference between AI and machine learning. So everything is AI.
It's all AI. It's all AI.
It's all AI. Look, I'll be the first one to admit, and this is why I don't use the term. I don't know the difference between AI and machine learning because to me it all seems like the same thing. Like legitimately, to me it seems like the exact same fucking thing. But I do know when a company and multiple companies and marketers go, AI is the big thing, so we're going to put AI on everything, or we're going to put machine learning on everything.
That's what I can't stand.
That just means you don't know your shit.
Yeah, because I did not go to Black Hat or DEF CON this year because I couldn't. Everybody wanted me to come. Everybody's like, "We're COVID's over with. You can travel." I'm like, I don't want to be in a plane with everybody's cooties, but I'll do it. But I said, look, you're going to sponsor me to come out there. And I had 22 vendors wanting me to come out and speak at their booths and, praise their shit and blah, 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 because I've used it or I know how it works or, and I talk a lot of shit. I talk a lot of shit about cybersecurity. And I talk a lot of crap about what the government can and can't do and what administrations have done in the past, haven't done in the past. And I'm a walking history book of some of the successes and failures of what has happened in our industry. But not one of them wanted to pony up and fly me out to Vegas. Not put me up in a hotel, nothing. I mean, it tickled me to death. I was like, look, and I even wrote an article about it and put it on LinkedIn. And I was like, look, if you want me to come out and do this, you're going to have to fucking pay me and put me up for per diem because, I can't take PTO out of my day and my job and everything and go to Vegas and, talk about AI,
Well, you'll notice I have no sponsors for this show. I don't do sponsors, and actually at this point in time in my career, right now, and I will say this live, no, they don't sponsor me. Like I said, I have no sponsor. I don't get paid for this shit unless you guys pay me and donate to the show.
Yeah.
There are 2 organizations right now that I personally really think have a lot of good things going for them and are doing a lot of good. Bitdefender being one. And I hate putting them on blast because the moment you become public, then you get publicer, and then people start trying to bypass your shit. But Bitdefender as a personal, not enterprise, I've never dealt with their enterprise.
No, yeah.
Personal level, Bitdefender, amazing. VPN, EDR, antivirus, you name it, it fucking has it. Password manager now. I love Bitdefender. The other one is from an enterprise level would be Tanium. Tanium, looking at their shit going into everything that they do is another one. Look, if either one of those would ever be like, hey, I'll sponsor you, bet. Homie, pay me. I'll take it. They are the only 2 organizations right now, or companies or vendors or whatever you want to call it, that I have looked at, that I have dealt with personally and invested time into figuring out what they do, that I'm like, dude, like literally I can go into a browser, I go into Google Chrome or anything with a Bitdefender add-on, and it'll throw up a thing that says, hey, homie, you don't want to go to this site? It's fucked up. What do you mean?
Well, yeah, it's the same thing with me, is, because I dealt in the medical industry for so long. I was one of the first people to hack medical devices, and beyond ATM
I've
machines.
hacked medical Wi-Fi.
Yeah, I physically hacked the device.
Oh,
Like I hacked a
I haven't tried
pacemaker.
that yet.
I've hacked a pacemaker that my dad had, which was a make and a model by a company, and I'll never forget it because they brought me in. They're local in my area. They brought me in and said, "Hey, we want you to hack our insulin pumps, and our anything to do with our bloodborne pathogens machines, anything to deal with our pacemakers." I was like, "Okay." So give me the code, and let me get the frequency numbers and all this kind of stuff. And I gave them, and they were like, "Man, you really know what you're doing." I was like, "Yeah, I've kind of been doing this for a while." So I got all this information, and they actually delivered to my garage, a bloodborne pathogen machine, a pacemaker that was in a demo state to where I could, fuck with it. And, same thing, with some of their stuff. And within their insulin pump, I was able to hack within, because it was using Java 645, and I was able to hack that in about 7 hours. And the bloodborne pathogen machine it was completely open sourced, and they had like 12 ports open to it. So I was able to bypass that. And then, when I got into pacemakers, I found out the frequency number, which was the same as that he was using by Bluetooth and some other different devices, because that's how they configured them, and I turned it off. So, like, I could have stopped somebody's fucking heart, or I could have sped it up to where it could fucking explode. Yeah. So I write all this shit up, in this huge binder report, and I give it to them, and I'll never forget this. One of the most worst days of my life. They literally said, "Okay, Mr. Harris, thank you so very much," because they always want to hear the, 10 minutes of good, 10 minutes bad, 30 minutes of good. They always want to hear the, well, this is the bad stuff that I found out. Here's the good stuff I found out. They said, "Okay, Mr. Harris, step out just for a second," and everything. And they all talked in the boardroom and whatnot. Then they brought me back in and said, "Thank you for your presentation. You've done a great job and everything. And we have decided we're not going to patch or do anything for this because we just talked to legal, because, it will be easier for us to pay legal lawsuits than it would be for us to update, patch, and, rip and replace those systems out of human beings."
So it'd be easier to pay for somebody dying than to actually fix our shit.
Yeah.
Cool. Good to know.
I was like, "Okay, I'm out of here. That's it." I cashed that check, put it in my bank, and I was like going, and I felt dirty. I physically felt like I had committed a crime.
Don't you, as someone who has delved in Rev Team for so long?
Oh yeah.
Been a pen tester, been down that rabbit hole and everything else. Feel dirty every time you deal with some of these organizations that support critical infrastructure, major things like banking, loan, whatever the case may be. Shit that affects the common person. And they'd be like, "So look, here's our scope. We just want you to attack these 5-10 IPs, not these routes."
Yeah. And
well, why not? Well, because you could bring our systems down, or because we know we don't. No, fuck you, homie. Like, no. Like, why? You need to fix this. This needs to be dealt with. If I run a scan and it brings down your system, You have issues you need to address and fix. But if you know this and if you haven't fixed it in 10 years, we got bigger issues. I know I need money, but not that bad. I'm out, homie.
Well, I mean, I was like, this was my first real pen test I'd done at an enterprise level. So this was years and years and years ago. And, I signed off on it. CTO signed off on it, got the check, cashed it, put it in the bank, paid off some bills and everything. And I felt dirty. But then 6 months later, guess what? They had their first lawsuit because of their issues that were actually known and publicized and put into their report and their risk management and their vulnerability assessment report, because they have to do that by law.
Right.
And they put that in there, and legal caught a hold of it, and they went to court, and they lost, and they paid millions and millions and millions of dollars more than they thought they would. And then they, instituted a recall after that first person died. And it feels bad, because there's always, it's like I learned this in the military, there's always collateral damage, no matter what it is.
In this industry, there's always going to be. Always going to be, because people aren't going to do what they're told, do what's suggested. But I put this out earlier. I think it was earlier this week.
Civilians will never understand it. Only us that are military trained understand that there's going to be collateral damage. Now, it sucks that somebody had to die, but it proved the point. And then that CTO and that CIO, within 6 months after that lawsuit was settled, were gone, and they had brought in new people. So I felt better.
So a good friend of mine, Ryan Risotto, who's been on the show twice now, put something out about, the CISO and, how they're the fall guy and this, that, the third. And she's not wrong. But here's the problem. And then we are at the top of the hour, so we will get final thoughts. We'll do things for new people. It's going to happen.
Sure.
But here's the issue. The CISO and the technicians, if the CISO can defend themselves, maybe they're friends with the CEO or whatever the case may be, 9 times out of 10, though, the CISO is the fall guy, fall girl, fall woman, whatever it is, fall person. That's what they are. They go in there knowing that if something happens, they're going to get fired. They're going to have their name blasted throughout the media. You go into these roles knowing this. I legitimately made a post in Signal one day to some of my friends and was like, I want to be a CISO just long enough to collect that bonus, like at the table, be seated at the table, collect the bonus to pay off my debt, to then go back to doing what I'm doing now. Because I couldn't do it for my entire career. Couldn't do it for the rest of my life. Because I know at the whim, if shit happens because the CEO didn't have my back, the CIO didn't have my back, the CFO didn't have my back, the COO didn't have my back, I'm getting fired. I'm gone.
Oh, yeah.
Deuces.
We out. I'm a virtual CISO, and was a virtual CISO for a company for a year. I got blamed for everything, and I mean everything. I was like going, the money was good. Don't get me wrong. I made a major accomplishment. I did one of the biggest, it was a very big career jump.
What is the most dangerous? A CISO right now in any organization is the most dangerous position to hold. It is the equivalent of a contractor at the point where your career can end on a dime. Guess what? You got breached. No, homie, you got breached. No. You're the CISO. You got breached. It's your fault, but you didn't give me the funding to secure. Nope, your fault. You're out. What?
Yeah. You couldn't pay me enough to do the job. Right? You could fill up my whole house with $100 bills. I wouldn't fucking do it. I mean, it's simple as that. Because what you're saying is 1 bazillion% true. And the thing is, that position in a couple more years will not exist. Because you know why? Nobody's going to want to do it. And I tell people, it's like you're going to have your chief information officer, that job title will be erased. And it will only be the chief technology officer. Because why? The chief technology officer basically has to kiss the ass and go begging to the person that actually runs cybersecurity. Yeah. And that person is the chief financial officer, because that's the motherfucker that cuts the checks. I've said it a million times in government. If the CFO is not 1,000% on board with your cybersecurity plan, the CTO and the CIO can't do shit. In other words, you don't get your tool packages, you don't get your things that you need to fix the network, the systems, whatnot, because the chief financial officer said, fuck you, we got to cut 25% of the budget, and you're not immune to that. So everybody across the board is going to lose money, contractors, people, headcount, whatnot, because we've got to basically show profits, that are done, to the board, that show our investors and our people that are investing in our publicly traded companies that we're doing this to happen. We've seen this happen before. I mean, we saw this happen at Equifax. We've seen this happen with multiple different breaches. you know, and
SEC went after SolarWinds
yes,
with their
SolarWinds got their, I mean,
CISO.
SolarWinds got their balls kicked in. I mean, and the thing is, this is
To
not.
be fair, they kind of deserved it by allowing the password they did. Just
Yeah,
say
they
the fact that you allowed it, not
yeah.
the whole breach, not everything went up. The fact that you allowed the most basics of shit that you should not allow to happen, you kind of deserve it.
It's the same thing. It's like I scream and yell. I mean, I yell and scream about stuff that I deal with Microsoft that they could have fixed 14 years ago. 14 years ago, I showed my boss a bug that we have now that went all the way back to 1998 to a patch that they never fixed. He's like,
There's a few things they came out with. There's been a few things they haven't fixed that were just coming out that like,
yep.
Hey, this has been around since whatever. Like I think Print Nightmare has been around forever, but it only got publicly released when it did.
Yeah, so I mean, it's like Blue Crush, Spectre, WannaCry. I mean, there's tons of these different issues. I yell and scream about Microsoft. I said, look at the CVE. This CVE and CVSE, I tracked it all the way back to where it originally began in 1998 till today. They just kept changing the fucking number and just kept changing on a patch cycle. But every operating system from literally, Vista, before Vista. So it was actually
probably because it's an NT. Probably would have been Windows 2000, Windows 2000 Pro.
It was an NT4. It was an NT issue that then spawned into Longhorn that they put into Longhorn that went into ME, and then ME basically spawned it into 7, that then spawned it into 10, and now it's sitting in fucking 11. And all they did was just keep changing the numbers on up. Same thing. I'm one of the first people that has actually been credited by the United States federal government for using artificial intelligence to write the first OT malware program. Literally by myself. And I love
that. And this will be the last thing I say, Chip.
They were scared shitless. They're like, how did you do this? I used OpenAI. And they're like, you're kidding me. I'm like, no. All this code, everything that I did, I asked it for what it would do, and it pulled all the information off the open internet and from its databases and wrote me this malware. Thank you. Have a great day.
That's the thing to get around to. So this will be the last thing I say, then we're going to get into final words and advice. When it comes to OpenAI, what I have found, it does store your information and knows who you are and what you're talking through and all this shit. My buddy sent it to me. He literally sent me the whole string of text of everything that happened. Yes, it literally stores everything. It knows your email address. It knows who you are. It can share that to the world. It has it saved in the background. The other thing is, if you word things the correct way, so you cannot sit there and say, hey, write me a piece of malware that does X, Y, and Z. You have to word it in such a way like, let's say social engineering, for example, just because it's the easiest thing for me to come up with. Hey, write me a marketing email that will explain the benefits of X, Y, and Z, or get someone to subscribe to X, Y, and Z.
Yep.
It'll fucking do it. And now I have a I may need to change a few words, but let's look at it from a foreign language standpoint. I'm coming from Iraq or Russia or China or North Korea or South Korea or anywhere that does not speak English as a primary language. I'm going to go to OpenAI, ChatGPT, and say, hey, write me a marketing email that does X, Y, and Z. Here you go. Bet. And then you just attach a link to it. You literally put it in your email program, attach a hyperlink. There you go. Same thing works for malware. You put it in there and you don't say you're writing malware. You don't say you're doing your homework. You don't say you're doing X, Y, and Z. You word it to where you need a code that needs to be able to do these things, and it will do it.
Yep. I took mine from Visual Basic and I said, write it in Python, and it did. I said, convert this from a VS or .NET, we had VS and .NET in it, and I said, I want it to be a .py file. And it did it for me. I mean, I didn't have to do anything. I mean, it changed all the coding, and it made it actually more elegant and better than what I originally coded it at. So, and I'm not a fucking developer. I will tell you right now, I'm not a fucking developer.
Me neither, homie. Me neither. I can make scripts all day. To write scripts, to develop anything. Dude, I
suck ass at writing cron jobs. I mean, and I love me some Linux. Don't get me wrong. I mean, but I suck at writing cron jobs. And the thing though too is that's why I have a fucking developer on my team. He is OpenAI trained, and he's doing all this shit with artificial blah 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 blah. But he still knows how to fucking code. I mean,
Hey, look, I'll just say this: me and Stack Overflow,
yeah,
homies.
yeah. I
Me
will
and Stack
Google the
Overflow, homies.
fuck out of that answer. I will Google the living fuck out of that answer. Because I mean, if I don't know, I mean, where's the first place you can do? You're gonna go fucking Google it. You're gonna look it up on DuckDuckGo. You're gonna look it up on fucking Tor. You're gonna look it up over here. I mean, you're gonna find some search engine that's gonna eventually give you the answer because some motherfuckers either asked the question before or has run into the problem, somewhere down the line. It's just that simple. I mean, and you can, say and pretend and say that you think you know what you're doing, but most of the time, 9 times out of 10, I'll be the first person to raise my hand. I go, I don't know what it's fucking doing, but I can read the code. I can't write it to, redo it. But I mean, hey, I can at least give you the syntaxing of what it's doing or not doing, for what it should do,
Yep.
what the code and the program should do. But I'm not a developer by any means whatsoever. So, final thoughts. Here we go.
Yep. So, all right, we going. You going solo, homie? Run this shit. Give me final thoughts on anything for cybersecurity basics and CISOs, and then give me the best advice you have for newbies.
So the best advice I have for newbies is first off is know what it is that you want to do in your heart of hearts for what it is that you want to be able to obtain, and what certifications you're going to need, and do your research. You have more research tools now than I ever did in 1994, period, just bar none. You've got YouTube, you've got the internet, you've got people that work in the industry, you have multiple avenues, that we have cut those trails for you to start following. So please do your research on exactly what it is that you want to do within this industry that's going to make you happy. That's the first thing. The money will come. You've got to get your certifications. You've got to pay your dues. You've got to do your training, and you're going to have to suffer for your art. I mean, that's just a given. That's just how the nature of this business is. If not, you're being set up to be a patsy and a proxy in a boardroom somewhere where you will basically lose your career within about a year. The average turnaround time in this industry, if you are not prepared to make these sacrifices that we've talked about on today's podcast, you will burn out literally within 5 years. That is just an average. You will burn out within 5 years. Please know what it is that what you want to do that's going to be able to make you happy. The other thing, though, too, is that when I tell this to CISOs and I tell this to CEOs and everything, is you invest in the business. If you're making millions of dollars like we've talked about, you've got money that you have to be able to invest into your people, into training, into hardware, into services, and better infrastructure. If you are making this kind of money, you should be able to fix the most simplest of things. Simple is good. It's just that. But here's the deal. We don't like change. As human beings, we don't like anything that's going to upset our own small little worlds. But as I tell people, the fine details of every single problem are always the most simplest of answers. And most people don't want to hear what it is that I'm going to tell them. I am not necessarily, as I tell people, guaranteed a warm reception within the boardroom or with the people that I interact with, because my job is to tell the truth. 100 bazillion% the truth. Very unfiltered, straight to your face, because what I deal with, not only in the IT sense, can end up hurting people, but in the OT sense, what I can end up dealing with can kill people and put people's lives in danger. And I have to keep that in my mind when I go to bed at night is, did I do everything that I possibly could to protect the data for my clients and my users and to protect their safety and the security of their lives? That's it.
I mean, it's all valid information. And to be honest, I think that, when we look at new people coming into the industry and look at what we're going to do, people like to take everything. And look, don't get me wrong, when you're first breaking in, when you're first doing things, it's mile wide and inch deep, kind of like the CISP, right? Mile wide, inch deep. You're not going to get everything. You're going to get a lot of everything.
Mm-hmm.
And so in this career, you have to network. You have to be able to find your passion. You got to be able to find what you love. I know there are people out there and they will argue with me all day. Go for it. I don't fucking care. If you're in this for the money, you're in it for the wrong reasons, because you're going to jump from company to company and you're never, ever actually going to be happy with what you do, because money can only take you so far. If you don't love what you do, you're going to be miserable every single fucking day you get off work. Every day. If you love what you do, and this is a career field where you can make a hell of a lot of money.
Yeah.
But if you don't love what you do, you're going to make a lot of money for no reason. It's just going to happen. So I think that we need to get back to loving what we do. The other thing I will say is this. Understand it's going to take time. It's going to take energy. It's going to take a willingness to understand that you may have to take a pay cut if you're transitioning into this career field later on in your life. You are going to have to take a pay cut. Take that first job. I don't give a damn if they are the worst culture, the worst anything. Take that first job. Sell yourself to a T. Take that job and just use it as a stepping stone to get to another. Because you have to get your foot in the door somewhere. Somewhere. They may treat you like shit, but guess what? If you could sit there and say, I was a security analyst for 6 months, a year, whatever the case may be, and apply to somewhere else, it sets you up for success. Deal with the bullshit for a little while, and it'll set you up for success later on. If you love this job, you can tune out everything else and be like, you know what? Fuck you. I don't care. I don't care. I don't care what you say because I'm not your friend. I'm here to collect the paycheck and bounce. Like, that's what we're gonna do because I don't like what you have to offer. I just need my foot in the door somewhere. Take it. They want to offer you $62,000 a year when you have more letters after your name than the damn alphabet. Fucking take it, because that's gonna set you up for success later on. Because your next job is gonna pay you double that, or whatever the case may be. Just go for it. It'll happen. It'll get there. But don't give up. Don't ever quit. If you have the drive to be here, you can never give up. You can't quit. Because only then are you a failure. Any other time, you're not a failure. The moment you quit, the moment you say, I'm done, I'm out, deuces, you're a failure. And we don't take failures. We take people that have the drive to succeed. So keep pushing, keep driving, keep going, and you got this. Now, saying that, look, I love you all. As you all know, you've watched some of my other videos on TikTok, all my other shorts, all the other shit that I got going on that I got to get back to eventually. And I will. I promise. Walk with me. We'll come back. Probably in the new year. I was going to do it earlier, but probably in the new year, it'll come back. But either way, you're all my warriors. You're all my family. I love you all. Take care. Have a great holiday season. I'll be here every week. This is what we do. This is who I am. You know I ain't going nowhere. And if you got new people, send them my way. They need to be on the show and get their voices heard. And I'll see you all next week for another amazing episode of Security Happy Hour.